Mina Isatu Smile Sesay, and this is not the program Talk to the Camera. Today the camera then the African peer review mechanism the office for Nobel waiting the African peer review mechanism they about, and also waiting in mean to Salon since the president of the Republic of Sierra Leone don't become the chairperson for the African peer review mechanism. So for the purpose of the interview, waiting this African peer review mechanism they about.
Yeah, thank you for that question. The African peer review mechanism, first and foremost, for the listeners and all of Willow Gatton Street, now an initiative where the African leaders then came together in 2003 for me then get a common forum who said then they compare notes. Notes in the sense what thing then they do in the various countries in terms of policies and how them policies, governance generally. Well, you know, say governance is about policies and implementation of those policies. So now that make them come together. Now heads of state, now then are the peers, just like what we can say peer group. So we are talking about heads of state and government, now then constitute the African peer review mechanism. We get 4 thematic areas. I will summarize them for the sake of time, but all those they talk about governance. For instance, we talk about democracy and political governance. We talk about corporate governance, economic governance, then economic development. And then 4 areas more. What thing you they do? Where you go, you present what you don't do, and every other thing to your colleagues, then heads of state. Then thereafter, then say go make comments, observations. Then go able for equip you. It's about let we grow together. Now that the African peer review mechanism actually therefore.
So this African peer review mechanism, it don't get any impact where it don't make Nasa alone?
Yes, of course, it don't make impact. The African peer review mechanism, Sierra Leone don't do this since 2004. And from that time day to now, a lot don't happen. You know, government business or the public sector way 9 African peer review because APRM all over the 43 countries where they now for just complement the efforts of government by undertaking research in specific areas, then the report will again to government. Now that then they do all across them 43 countries then they normally, and the rule here is that governments also go for say I don't accept or I want for make una review me because at the end of the day now the president or the head of state then they review. Now you get for answer that question. So coming to your question as Sierra Leone, they don't do a lot of things. Some of the recommendations the way the country review them they don't do long before they take over. Then country reports then they come they filter into decision making. So even if we talk about the medium-term national development program by His Excellency the President another bill, and even in predecessor the one way instead they do like former President Kuma, even President Kaba, because now during President Kaba in time this thing came into being, which Sierra Leone accede. So it mean a lot. The most recent one under my own leadership now the Secretariat who don't just conclude now this targeted review we will do on health governance and COVID-19 response. The essence there now being followed, we look at because we decided not just look at what we do for COVID-19. We also look at even before COVID-19 how we health system been there, what have been the challenges and what are the successes and the like. So we get international consultants with 2 local consultants. Because if before now, the way they advertise in fact, no Sierra Leone not apply, but later the Continental Secretariat, when they the overall body, Secretariat where they work with say no. You know, get all people when are outsiders for can't really find out and report on Sierra Leone. Sierra Leoneans themselves, may themselves be involved. So we get for get 1 lecturer from the University, 1 professor and so on. Then we get another statistician, then we get an international consultant and then do one. Then they now don't they make a lot of they bring they give information as to which way for go. Because governance, research very important. Western world and they spend a lot of resources on research because some of the time if you not do research and get really within the issues then you go down do a lot of wastages before you can't really know say this was where the problem is. So these are the benefits then we will get and we will continue to get. And one such benefit in fact is that now because of the contribution, how we they manage the own program now I think one of the factors in that we contribute for me with President emerge as the chairperson for the APRM Forum of Heads of State for the next 2 years. So that also will bring a lot of benefit to we.
Okay, we get for can talk about that, the president chairman for the APRM. But now, when the APRM can sit?
When you can sit normally, the APRM forum of heads of state, then can meet once every year, normally during the AU. When the African Union they meet, the APRM also they meet along that same time, because almost all the African leaders then they attend both meetings. And I also want to tell listeners that because of the effectiveness of APRM generally as an effective governance, as an instrument for promoting governance on the continent, there is almost now a marriage or a merger between the APRM and the AU. AU don't even take over the sponsorship to the extent that they don't even see countries then we don't accede to APRM, no go they contribute again, AU go take over. Although then say then with a caveat that you will pay if you may owe anything to APRM, you will pay. So that just they tell you how even the African Union don't recognize the role of the APRM.
So now let me talk about the president's appointment as the chairperson for APRM. What does this mean to the country?
Yes, it means a lot. We will look at the impact, how that will affect we both. Now we look at internally and internationally. We will start from home. Internally, one thing we may go draw attention to, they don't give recognition, because if they appoint the president, if they endorse with president for chair the APRM Forum of Heads of State for 2 years, that means at Sierra Leone. In fact, at APRM level, even when we can go for conferences, they really call individuals. They say Sierra Leone, then say Nigeria. If they get one time we did Nairobi, then just say Sierra Leone for moderate this session. That means that made them they refer to. Even on the tables, we know the right name, not just countries. Because mind you, not only countries. So that is it. But the most important benefit we will get from the president in elevation as chairperson of APRM Forum of Heads of State, it serve as a basis for let we step up. Because right now, if they say now you the chair, just when they say now you the captain a team, you get a lot of role for play. You are not only a player, but you also get for ensure that other players play. Because now you get for coordinate. Technically, you will get the team manager. But once the team they now in play, the team manager get very little for play. Although in the sidelines, they say move here, move here, move here. So that don't give we a lot of it don't give him another responsibility. And if we handle that responsibility, we accept her and handle her. Before the 2 years they done with democratic credentials go down improve. Even when we're journalists, we all get for change reporting style, because now so that is now what is happening. Even journalists, when they say democracy or democratic governance, not to just the head of state or the executive or the judiciary or parliament, even when they work on the street, we will have it democratic. You get for observe somebody in democratic rights, whether a poor or a ritual. So me feel say now one of the greatest benefits that if we accept, say we have a challenge, not for saying a problem, or I don't call them problem, it's a challenge. Now you get for step up. Because we don't get good name now. They don't give fine reports. Because for when we presidents get to that point, me feel say a big recognition. And because they don't recognize we say get for prepare with us now. The other way they get good strangers. If not being paint self, they paint. Sometimes exposure they bring that. So now to me, that's not the benefit. We will all go see and go cascade, because if we are talking about championing democracy, good governance, corporate governance, and all them things, and all say human security, if now we the champion that na the continent, there will be a role model. So we get for take things how we get for do something that not go be me appeal to we all, so that people not go regret why make in fact they say Sierra Leone for champion this cause, so that tomorrow the benefit we will get if we perform well as a country, because if the president perform well, now we all don't perform, and therefore we get for give the full support for make it perform well. Tomorrow, sometimes if BBC wants somebody say if now journalists in Sierra Leone apply, then we'll say, hey, Sierra Leone, then people then any responsibility where you give one of them, they can do them very well. So let's look at them. We'll look at them from the immediate, but the long-term benefits then go come.
Okay. And before then they endorse the president for being the chairperson for APRM, what will be the criteria where they believe?
Well, if you really ask me for make I give the specific criteria, no, but I go give am generally, like I say, this is exclusively a matter for heads of state and government. Other person no dey. And normally, in fact, when dem can they take them critical decisions there. The opening session, I don't dey on 2 occasions, then they allow journalists and other people, observers. But once it come to taking critical decisions, now only the heads of state then can all left and take decisions after we they make her. But of course, I know you get for one, you get for be approved. That means they are looking at even your track record generally. Because if you get for take, you know, go can't take somebody, for instance, like them countries, then now we get constitutional business, they're not going able for go say, make this person, I can champion a cause where you not believe. Because you get for believe in something before ever you champion her. So I think say one of the fact now all them factors they can take into consideration, because the fate of the forum lies in the hands of the chairperson. Now you get for direct the activities, the cause of events and the like. And you self get for be a Democrat. You know somebody who forget values for principles of democratic good governance. Your human rights records been true. And you remember quite recently, we don't even as a country, we don't repeal the seditious libel law. Because if Parliament repeal any law, now we repeal them. Parliament then they represent we. Then even a lot of other things, for instance, now the death penalty, all them things they don't make. And I feel say now even expediting justice, we now get sitting magistrates and judges almost in all districts. These are all indicators, because what can delay justice, for instance. So let's look at from that holistic point of view. Maybe think say then take all them factors then into consideration, where they say, well, you know, I think Sierra Leone can't work and try.
As the name implies, African peer review mechanism na compulsory for make all African countries they part of this particular group?
A very good question. No, it's not compulsory, man. It is voluntary. Now voluntary accession. But rather than encourage countries for candy. And even I understand say Burundi now they on the verge for even joining the mechanism. Because the output, they do very well in other countries, including Sierra Leone. For instance, Rwanda, we all know the story, just like a winner, then have been genocide. In addition to other policies, they don't look at some of the thematic areas of African peer review mechanism, and they are genuine because, mind you, you also get for accept. Where the problem can arise is not a question of satisfying the leadership. It is about telling people the truth. We know they put them on trial. We know they criticize. We know they say, you know, do fine. We just they tell you, say, for me, things happen A, B, C, and D for D. If we are talking about, for instance, succeeding in food security, rest for them are people them bold. Now the only just stick down there, not to theory. Governance, not to propaganda. Elections, you can propaganda, but governance, na reality. So now that's the whole thing.
So how many years the president get for take that position therefore?
Now 2 years, it's 33. Now 2 years. Now President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa, now he don't serve the first 2 years. After the 2 years, then get for go. So President Bill get for ready for 2022 and 2023. After which, then another president will come.
So waiting at the message we go add to all wait you don't say so.
The message where I go add, or perhaps where I go want for convey to all Sierra Leoneans, including myself, yourselves, and every Sierra Leonean, both within and without, is that let we take advantage of the recognition we don't begin get other people that don't begin they get confidence in us. Because mind you, for me somebody even at club level, for instance, even at slag level, when we take when president and as well when we president, the confidence we get in her. You're not gonna be 100%, but the vast majority get confidence in her. And I will go make it support. So if we president of Sierra Leone don't ascend that kind of position, we all get for put hands on deck. We set aside our differences, which are good, but those differences, we never allow them differences for take precedence over the national interest. Because that they add respectability, they add prestige to the country, so we got to retain that.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
As another listen to waiting the Executive Chairman for the African Peer Review Mechanism Salon, don't talk about the benefits where Salon get since the President don't be the chairperson for the African Peer Review Mechanism, and also waiting the APRM stand for. Mina Isatu Smile Sesay. Until we meet again to another edition of the program Talk to the Camera, I say, tata.